Tafshin Tez. And we're going to start first from the beginning of the farbrengen of Purim, Tafshin Tez, 1957, and then we're going to go on further to a certain part, and maybe we'll go into another part. We'll see, time permitting. The Rebbe says in the beginning of the farbrengen, it was spoken about in the previous year. Since in Purim we have to be in a state of joy till he is beyond rational understanding. What does it mean, ad lo yada? To be beyond any type of measure and boundary. So then also the preparation for this joy should also not be going step by step, la'at by la'at, slowly. Because the matter that he has to reach, what is he trying to attain on Purim? Not something that has to do with knowledge and logic. When you're dealing with intellect, you can't jump. When you're going with something that's rational and intellectual, so then you have to go from level to level. Since he has to be in a level of, reach a level of beyond knowledge, since there has to be an idea of jumping, you anyway have to jump. So then the effect of the jumping can be already at the beginning, but in the same measure, like you would do this jump in the middle at the end of the matter. So you're going to have to jump anyway, the Rebbe says. If you're going to have to jump anyway, you might as well already jump at the beginning instead of waiting till the middle or to the end. The Rebbe explains what he means by it. The idea behind this is Klolis Indian the Purim, the general idea of Purim, Klolis in Yonah Shel Chodesh Adar, and the general idea of the month of Adar. Darga is not something that goes step by step, but rather turned it completely around. From one extreme to the other extreme. Like it was in the physicality, in the literal sense, during the miracle, instead of the decree to destroy, to kill, and to completely lose the Eden. Upon those that the decree was decreed upon, kiblu koyach, they received the empowerment to be able to destroy their enemies. That's an idea that goes from one extreme to the other extreme. So instead of being the vanquished, they became the victors. Move on. The miracle that took place, then we can understand to the general idea of the avoid of the days of Purim. That's every single year. Like it says in the Megillah, and these days of Purim will not pass from amongst the Yidden, and their memory will not cease from their children. Purim is not like other Yom Tovim. There other Yom Tovim, there is a progression step by step and through preparations, but rather the avodah of Purim that we are transforming and going from one extreme to another extreme. We do not take in consideration our state and situation that we find ourselves in. We transform ourselves to a state and situation from the deepest heights to the ultimate good that one can only reach here in this world. Why can we only reach the ultimate good in this world? That only the true infinite of Hashem, we cannot have that in Gan Eden, we cannot have that in any of the spiritual worlds, we can only have it here in this physical world. So too it's concerning all the details are to be found in the day of Purim. And this is by prefacing something that illuminates like the sun, that the sun rests upon the entire world. And it's mirrored in everything. It is reflected even in one drop of water in the same manner like it's reflected in the great ocean. In other words, when we see a reflection of the sun in a one droplet of water on the ground, we see the entire sphere of the sun in that droplet, just like we would see it on the ocean, you'd see the entire sun. The Rebbe says similar to that in our situation. In every detail of Purim, is mirrored also the idea of it being transformed from one extreme to another extreme. We do not need a demand from ourselves in matters of preparation. Since Hashem demands of us the idea of transforming from one extreme to another extreme, he gives us the powers that's necessary so to be able to be the transformation from the deepest depths to the highest heights. So too it's concerning this farbrengen, the Rebbe says. It's not necessarily that we need to get warmed up little by little. Therefore, you gotta wait how long it takes for people to warm up. We could immediately boil out of passion and excitement in 1 moment and in 1 hour. And then take that boiling point that we start at the beginning of the farbrengen and use that for the rest of the farbrengen. And again, the foil concerning actuality, now we should say l'chaim, it's a chamimus varmkeit, out of warmth, and they should sing a joyous song with a storm. So in such a degree that at the beginning of the farbrengen, it should be as if we're in the middle of the whole excitement of the farbrengen, as if it was like we were farbrengen for a long time. And afterwards, the Rebbe said, when we talk about that we do not need any preparations, we don't have to wait with the nigun until they say l'chaim, we can do it in 1 moment. Okay, now let's get to a point that the Rebbe learns out from Purim in a practical way. Let's see over here. Okay. Oistazai. Purim, concerning Purim, it says, it says it in Torah. And Torah, we know, is from the expression hayra'ah, a lesson. So therefore, this means that this is something that's meant to teach us. These days of Purim, will not pass from amongst the Yidden, and the memory of them will not cease from their descendants. This means to say, in Yonei Purim, matters of Purim, Mahavim Hayra al Kol Adoros. They become a lesson for all generations. Gam al Dor Kazeh She'ein B'Gzeres Chas v'Shalom K'ma Shehayu was. Even such a generation that doesn't have the decrees, heaven forbid, the way it was then in the times of Achashverosh. But that is all in the physical realm. But from the perspective of the matters in the spiritual, it's necessary to act in the manner the way the Yidden acted at that time. By Yomim Ahem Bizman Hazeh, in these days, in those days, in this time, Kedei Levatel Gezeres Haman, to nullify the decree of Haman. So even though there's no Chas v'Shalom physical decree on the Yidden, there's still necessary in the spiritual realm for us to act in the same way as they did. So he says, at that time, there was a decree to, heaven forbid, destroy all the at the decree that was sent out from Shushan, the capital city of those days. Eden did everything in their power to stop the decree until it became that it was transformed. From the manner that the Eden acted then, so we know now how to act when there are such things in the spiritual. As we said, in the physical world, Baruch Hashem, there's no gzeiros, but there's always spiritual threats to Klal Yisrael on our ruchnius and so on. So he says in Oshit Zayin, by Yom Mahem, Esther Hoya Malch, that time Esther was the queen. We have a sister in the royal palace, as the Gemara expresses it. And on top of having a Jewish woman being in the royal house, Mordechai was sitting at the king's gate, which means he occupied an important position even before he became a viceroy at the end of the Megillah. So we had two major Jewish people involved in the highest levels of government. Afal became, still in all, B'Shoshan at the time when the decree was made. And surely they tried to nullify the decree in all types of ways. Lloyd, some and there was no benefit that came out from whatever they did. And came out the written decree that what there was to be against the Jewish people. And then they turned to a totally different idea and plan how to deal with this. So the Rebbe asked a question, seemingly, since they were close in the capital city and they had someone in the royal palace. They had the greatest and most powerful connections that was possible to be in the royal house. The Chazal say that a wife is like the husband's own body. So therefore, Esther was the queen. Why they have to look for other things? What is the other things that we're talking about? Ba'afel became a super medrash, still in all the medrash relates. Mordechai placed all of these matters aside. He didn't say, I have royal connections. He didn't yet say that Esther has all the royal connections. But instead, what was his main focus? He collected 22,000 Jewish children, and he studied with them Torah. And not only did he study with them Torah, but the Rebbe points out he didn't even study with them something that has any type of connection with what they were going through. He studied with them such a topic. He studied with them the laws of the Korban HaOmer that's brought on the second day Pesach from the new barley, that they had nothing to do with the state and situation that the Yidden were found in. Here's the Rebbe is already starting to hint where he's going with this. He studied with them something that would not be able to be used and serve as any type of physical goal, like, for example, being able to make a living. When there was hovering over them the decree, the Achashverosh destroy and to kill, and the building Beis Hamikdash stopped. As we know, there was a time when they started, and then they stopped by Golos Bavel, and the times of Achashverosh, it was right in between those two periods when it started and stopped again. And the Yidden did not know what time, when they will start to rebuild it. Achashverosh and Achashverosh came with the kindness that we're past the 70 years of Golos Bavel, and God is asleep. That's the whole story that Achashverosh took out the Kalim of the Beis Hamikdash, because a predecessor that took out the Kalim of the Beis Hamikdash died the very night that he took out and used the Kalim of the Beis Hamikdash. But Achashverosh, and the same thing, the Yidden had calculated that the 70 years of Golos Bavel already concluded, and the Beis Hamikdash was not built. So therefore, he said, no problem to use the Kalim of the Beis Hamikdash. Mishnas Chassidim, Shem Yusta Kisva Arizal, there's a sefer called Mishnas Chassidim that's based on the Arizal's writing. It was written by a Talmud of the Arizal, I believe. It's brought down, Shahaman v'zeresh v'yoyatzav asu gamas oisei acheshen shas Achashverosh. It wasn't only Achashverosh's calculation. Haman and his wife Zeresh and his advisors also made the same calculation that Achashverosh did, and that's why they felt free to do to the Yidden what they wanted, because the 70 years was up. The Yidden were promised 70 years after the Golos Bavel happens, they will return to Eretz Yisrael. It didn't happen. The Beis Hamikdash wasn't rebuilt, so therefore they felt that they have a free hand to be able to do to the Yidden what they wanted. At this time, Lomad Mordechai im Yaldi Yisrael Hilchas Omer. At that time, the Mordechai Tzaddik learned with the Mordechai learned with the Jewish children the laws of the Karban Omer. Limud Shemamenu Yefshaliasis Rav Shoichet Malamed Mashgiach, a type of study that you cannot make a living from. Nobody's going to become a Rav, or he's not going to become a Shoichet, or a teacher, or a Mashgiach, based on the laws of the Omer. So the Rebbe is like saying, people think that the whole idea of Torah is a vocational training. You're studying Torah to be able to become a rabbi. And then in those days especially, they were saying, why send your kids to yeshiva? He's not planning to be a rabbi. He's going to be a lawyer. He's going to be this, he's going to be that. Why send him to yeshiva? So you show that Mordechai taught the Jewish children something that had no practical application to be able to make a living from. Even Beis Hamikdash. Since the Beis Hamikdash was not built up, the Beis Hamikdash was only rebuilt afterwards, like 4 years after the decree of Haman. So therefore, this study that Mordechai taught the Jewish children did not even matter to be able to rule as a halacha l'maisa. But they didn't have to know what to do because there was no practical Karban Omer to bring. So this was purely studying Torah for Torah's sake. Mordechai lechipes lahamed davke goynim berashke bahagim. Mordechai did not search to set up goynim, or the Rashke Bahag is Rosh Tevis, Rosh Kol Bnei HaGoylo, the head of the entire diaspora, the entire exile. In other words, Mordechai was not looking to create big goynim. That Mordechai studied with Jewish children simple halachas of bringing the Karban Omer. The Torah Zu, and this Torah study that Mordechai studied with Jewish children, bitlag zeiras Haman. It nullified the decree of Haman. super big Gemara like to relate in the Gemara. Haman afterward Mordechai Rosh Sanhedrin Yoshev Aloymedim Lamdi in Yaldi Yisrael. When Haman saw that he passed by and he saw Mordechai, who was the head of Sanhedrin, studying, sitting and studying with Yaldi Yisrael, with Jewish children, Torah Lishmah. So Einay Mevatel Zeis. Ve'einay Mispoil Miklal Magzeda Lahashmin La'abid Chavshal. That Mordechai does not stop learning with them Torah. And he doesn't become affected at all by this idea of the decree. What matters to him is the 22,000 Jewish children. So then Haman knew so this is going to be his downfall. And then they were able to defeat him. What nullified the decree? The Jewish children sitting and learning Torah. But externally, there was something else going on. Afterwards, after they had Mordechai sitting down with all the Jewish children learning Torah, they to be able to include this in the ways of nature. Dibra Esther Achashverosh. So Esther had to speak with Achashverosh. Also, since Hashem wanted that it should be in such a way, there's a halachic terminology that the very mouth that said it's prohibited, it's the one that said it's permitted. So the Hashem wanted that Achashverosh, who sent out the decree, should be the very one to tell the Yidden they can go ahead and destroy their enemies. Why? Because then then it will be the idea that will be transformed and turned around. And then it will be Varabim Ors Misyadim, that many of the nations of the earth will become Jewish. In other words, the whole idea of transformation, which is the idea of Purim. But that was only a side point, what Esther did. The main point is teaching Jewish children. So here the Rebbe brings down the important lesson. The lesson from this to all Jewish people on all times. Do not rely on the benevolent people. Do not rely and do not put your trust and confidence in a person that the salvation does not come from him. Hainu, not only does the salvation not come from him, a human being, he himself needs help, and he can't help himself. At a time when we want to nullify a revealed decree. How much more so a concealed decree? It says, a soin is a revealed enemy, an oyev is someone that plots and schemes behind the scenes. So when it comes to a revealed enemy, you could take it on. But if it's behind the scenes and you don't even know that the person's an enemy, how are you even going to counter it before it's too late? So what is the way how to counter it? It's the way how you do it is the way that Mordechai affected it in those days. And then afterward, then we can also, once we use Mordechai's directive, sit and learn, and then we can use natural means. Why are we doing natural means? So that the Yetzer Hara can go ahead and he's going to be able to try to confuse us and say, why? Because Esther intervened, but not because of the Torah. The Yuchel and Nasos, because the Yetzer Hara will try to convince us that it's not a miracle but nature. That's only something that comes after Mordechai gathered the 22,000 Jewish children, to be able to conceal the event in nature. So the Eibishter made that after Mordechai brought all these Jewish children together and learned Torah with them. So afterwards, we used natural means, and we had Esther go approach Achashverosh. The first move was the Kabbutz Yaldi Yisrael to collect Jewish children. A little more than Torah and to study with them Torah. And this is something that needs to be done even by those that are sitting the first in Sanhedrin, meaning the Rebbe has always been demanding that it's not just for simple people to teach children Torah, but even the highest people like Mordechai was like the first and foremost of the Sanhedrin. He was the one that gathered together the Jewish children. The Rebbe connects this with a very, very famous topic about how nature interacts with our connection with Hashem when we're making a living. Similar to what's explained concerning that Hashem will bench you in everything you do. So it says this in the idea concerning the idea of making a living. The main thing of making a living is that's really coming from the Bracha of Hashem. So as to be able to enclose it in the ways of nature, there has to be everything you do, you need to do natural means. But the Rebbe says, we got to be careful. We got to know what's real and what's only a facade. True, we need to make vessels to enclose the Bracha of Hashem that gives us the parnasa. We need to enclose it in nature. When does the nature help? When does the B'chol Shetasa help? When does going out to our job help? Only when there's the bracha from above. Therefore, the first step, before we go out to making a living, before we go out to earn the parnasa, we need to do what's necessary to ensure the bracha from above. Then, once we ensure that the bracha has where to go, or the bracha is earned, so then we're going to make the vessel b'derech hateva, just like Mordechai. First, he went ahead and he gathered 22,000 Jewish children and learned with them Torah, and then only afterwards was there the whole thing about Esther approaching Achashverosh. The Rebbe explains, when we don't do anything, that there should be the bracha in its root and source. Therefore, we're lacking in the bracha of Hashem, that Hashem, God benches you, heaven forbid. What is the benefit of opening an account in the bank and preparing a big wallet or a big purse? The Rebbe uses this idea as an analogy for doing business. If a person goes to business and he doesn't have the Bracha of Hashem, it's like opening up a bank account or buying a wallet that you could stick a lot of dollar bills in it, but if you have nowhere where to get the dollar bills from, so then the bank account's going to be empty, the wallet is going to be empty. First and foremost, just like when you're opening a bank account, you need to have money to put in the bank account. Just like when you're buying a wallet, you need to have the money to put into the wallet. The same thing, just as when you're going to work, you need to have, that's only a keli, that's only the bank account, that's only the wallet or the purse. You need to have the bracha from above to put into the work that we're doing. So the Rebbe goes on to say, and so too, and how much more so in our case. There has to be that Hashem Elokecha should bench you to nullify the decree. This happens through educating Jewish children. To set up a blessed generation who is straight. through a manner of education that is appropriate, the way it's supposed to be. Then, once you have assured the main thing, you have ensured the chinuch of Jewish children, then there can be the idea that you will do things, the parnas that you will do, or you will do things to effect that the decree will stop. Which should be the appropriate vessels for Hashem's bracha to nullify the decree. So the Rebbe says this is the important part. Yes, we have to begin in the appropriate order. To set up a straight and blessed generation. How is that set up? That Yidden will study Hashem's Torah and they will study in the ways of Hashem, meaning they will study it in the appropriate manner, the Torah. The Rebbe was in that farbrengen also talking about the idea that the chinuch of Torah has to be altaris hakodesh, not to send it to any. There was many different types of day schools never run by non-fruma peoples. The Rebbe was saying we got to be careful. Like for example, one of the examples of studying Torah in the way that Hashem wanted us to study the Torah. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said concerning the studying of Aleph Beis in such a way that we're ensuring and emphasizing the holiness of the letters of the Aleph Beis and the holiness of the vowel signs of the Nekudas. And how is that emphasized? So there was an approach that came about from modern Hebrew Zionist, etc., and it started leaking into the Fruma community, and the Frierdiker Rebbe fought against this. That instead of studying the way we study Aleph Beis, first we teach the kids the Aleph Beis, then we teach the kids the Nekudas, and then we put it together. So they l'chatchila just taught them the Nekudas and the letters together, which means that you're not looking at the letters and the Nekudas as being holy in and of themselves. The Rebbe says, because the Oisius and the Nekudas are holy, Sarich Lilmid Kametz Aleph A. You need to study and know Kametz Aleph A, Kametz Beis Ba. But they're going to say, but it takes longer that way because then you got to teach the letters separately, you got to teach the Nekudas separately, then you got to show them how to put it together. So the Rebbe says, you don't need to think that we need to save time for Hashem. What does it mean, save time? To have the children notice earlier, and to put in effort that the Jewish child should learn reading as soon as possible, without telling him that the letter Aleph by itself, even though it has no meaning and even though it has no pronunciation by itself, is holy. And the same thing, there's the holiness of the Nekudas. The main thing is, as long as he could tweet like a bird, he could say the Oisius without realizing that this is holy. Rebbe says, as man shaykh l'Kadosh Baruch Hu, the time belongs to Hashem. If Hashem doesn't want to save and he's not cheap on time, I'm sorry, if not of Hashem, if the person is not cheap on the time and not trying to save the time, so he should be able, so the child should learn about the holiness of the letters and the holiness of the vowel signs. Hashem will fill his time with long-lasting days and long years, good years, so he should be able to complete and to add more. So to the study of Torah has to be the way Hashem directed through his servants, the Nevi'im, the prophets, and the Arabeim in every single generation until this final generation, that out of a preface and introduction of a feeling of holiness. That's the idea of Reishis Chachma. The beginning of Chachma is the idea of the fear and awe of Hashem. So then there's also the idea of wisdom. Since the beginning of Chachma is the awe of Hashem. The Rebbe goes on a whole bunch of details over here about learning with Torah and Kedusha, and making sure that he's in a holy institution, like I mentioned before, and not to be like in a Talmud Torah where they study in the afternoon, an hour or two. But he has to, and also Torah study has to be in such a way that he starts up the day with the Torah studies, not in such a way that he is, tired by the time he has to go ahead and get to Torah study because he was learning other types of secular studies. So the Rebbe concludes, this is also the lesson for the days of Purim, also these days and every single day, for every single Jew concerning his children. How much more so those that the divine providence gave them the power to influence. To influence on many Yidden. Yidden are considered children to Hashem, our God. That we need to use out their influence, that the study should be with the awe of heaven, that through that a generation of direct and straight Yidden should grow up. It will be straight generation. So then they will be blessed. They will be blessed with everything that they need. Through that, the children being blessed. Also their parents and their relatives will be blessed. So too, the whole Klal Yisrael in every single place where they are. Just like it was in those days. Through Mordechai sitting in one place. And he studied with Jewish children, said halachas in the Torah, the halachas, like we said, the farbrengen, this batla gzeres Haman, the decree of Haman ceased in all the 127 countries that was throughout the entire world. When we will study and teach Jewish children Torah with awe of heaven, that will nullify all the decrees, will bring to the state of transforming it, that the Yidden will rule over their enemies. Since the head enemy is the Yitzhahara, every single one will defeat him according to his level. This will draw down the complete and true redemption. That from then on, one fellow will not teach their others, because all of them will know me from the smallest to the greatest.
Amen. Sounds like a fine plan.
Wow, thank you so much.